Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Lions Den Sports Podcast. Very pleased to get on Malkit Purewal. Have I said that right?
That's right.
Perfect. Malkit, so let me tell you, it's an honour to get you on. Entrepreneur, you're in the property sector, you know, Savoy Properties, specialise in loads of different property sort of sectors, market, man. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me, Terry.
Thank you very much for coming down. I know it took you quite a while to come down, so I appreciate you coming down
That's
today.
okay. It's not often I make the trip down to the coast. So.
Get some fresh air in your lungs.
Exactly.
Are you going to spend the time here, see the sights or anything?
Not really. No, I need to get back. Father life, so I've got to pick my daughter up from nursery before the nursery closes this evening. So limited on time, but it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, no, likewise. Thank you for coming on. So, we want to find a little bit more about you, about how you got involved in sort of Savoy Properties, how you became the sort of person you are today, the entrepreneur sort of side of things. Tell us first about your upbringing. What was it like in your upbringing?
So for myself, from a Punjabi Sikh background, so my parents were migrants into the country back in the 60s. So I grew up in the 80s in Southall, so it was a predominantly Asian background. My parents were both doing manual skilled jobs. They then went on to run a couple of businesses in terms of off-license grocery and the takeaway. And that was pretty much most of my upbringing was around that industry. So, and then I think at 16, my parents retired from that. And I just thought, look, I want to do something that doesn't involve being, stuck to like a shop. Went to university, did a management studies degree. Once I graduated from that in the late 90s, it was a dot-com boom going on. And I jumped on that bandwagon by doing a master's in computer science and then pursued nearly a 20-year career within sort of IT and commodities trading.
Yeah, man. Hey, how was it? We're going to come on to that.
Yep.
But how was it brought up in a Punjabi Sikh household? Especially then, you said your mum and dad were manual hand jobs. It seemed like quite hard-working people as well.
So it was hard-working, putting in like sort of double shifts and stuff. It was not unheard of for that to happen back then. And then even with migrant Punjabis that come over now, it's quite common with them because they want to offer something that they were unable to offer to their parents were unable to offer. So I was actually then brought up by my grandmother, who then was looking after us, and obviously our parents were around, but it was limited because they were working so hard.
Yeah, I think that's quite traditional, isn't it? The parents, it's quite unique as well back then, because that was was that 60s, 70s, 80s? You said. So
yeah, basically what happened was my mother's dad came over in I think 1955.
Oh, okay.
He came over, so he was actually in Malaysia, and there was a call for, labour in the UK because it was recovering from Second World War.
Yeah.
He took a boat over from Kuala Lumpur all the way to the UK, settled in Southall, and my dad's dad came over, I believe, late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. He came over, and obviously my parents then got married in 1966.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's crazy. So in terms of you being brought up with your grandma as well, how was that?
It was amazing. So she was quite a pivotal part of my life up until 16 when she passed away. But yeah, she looked after myself and my other siblings, and she was like an integral part of our upbringing, and in terms of ethics as well. In terms of hard work, respect, things that we actually embody today and embody in what we do in Savoys.
Do you reckon that hard work that your grand taught you, do you reckon your mum and dad taught you that in some respect as well? For obviously working double shifts and all, that must have rubbed off at you quite well as well.
No,
right?
Definitely. Look, we're from a background where my grandparents and stuff had nothing. So they came over with nothing, and their aim was to just work hard, but it was putting us that you got to do it, but you got to do it honestly as well. So, don't put someone else down to get where you're going to go. So it's stuff that's embodied in us now. And it's quite sort of fundamentals of sort of a Punjabi Sikh background as well. They're always in high spirits as well.
Johnny
Yeah.
the Goliath, as we say.
Yeah, that's it. So it's always, doesn't matter. So whose house that we went to back when I was growing up, you know, they could be really poor, but when they turn up, you know, they're always like, you know, greet you and provide you like, you know, a 3-course meal and all the rest of it. It doesn't matter whether they're really wealthy or not. And that was like something that I saw and I didn't want to sort of lose as I then sort of progressed in my career.
Amazing, man. Do you know what's quite unique? Is back when you said your mum and dad were working, is for your mum to work full time and double shifts. Normally, as you said, in Asian tradition families, the woman will be at home looking after the kids, and the father will be out working. Even still, some of that goes on. So it's quite refreshing, even back then, that your mum was working full time or double shifts.
Well, if you look at like the Sikh background, it's supposed to be sort of equal.
Yeah.
So it's even like back in like the villages and stuff where my parents are from, like the women also work in terms of the farms and so on. So and it's not just necessarily just at home. Plus, you've got to remember when you came over in the 60s, you're also automatically you're on the back foot because you know you're renting and back then they were actually sharing with other families within a house.
Wow.
So it was actually quite difficult. So you had to work and to progress. And don't forget, they're not really from an educated background, so the jobs they'll get were quite lowly paid, unskilled roles. So I believe my mum used to work for T-Wall, used to make sausages and stuff. And then my father was working manual labor, like on roads and motorways and stuff. So that's the background that they're from. So they did well to save up to actually purchase their first home, and then go on in the 80s to actually purchase a business.
What was the first business they purchased?
So it was basically an off-licensed grocery convenience store, which was in West Drayton, and it's also one of the areas that like Savoys quite heavily invests in today.
Yeah. So how many businesses did your family own eventually?
So they actually had 2 businesses. So they had one was a takeaway, so a fish and chip shop, and one was an off-licensed grocery. So they're both still around today and they're still owned by the family. They're operated by other people. They're leased out, but they were also fundamental to my work ethic. Like today was, you know, just being part of that growing up.
Like, I take it you didn't want to go into those 2 businesses. That's how you sort of moved away from it, right?
No, 100%. So when you've got a business like that, it is 7 days a week, and even in the evenings, like I could see my parents like, okay, you know, do you know what? In the morning, I will do the school drop off, and then we've got to go cash and carry. We've got to do this, and it actually takes up your life. And I thought, okay, I want to do something that doesn't revolve around having a shop, because you don't switch off from it. Which is one of the reasons that I went into property.
And how about the Southall area when you were growing up? How was that because now it's obviously it was predominantly in the 80s, 90s. It was known as sort of the Indian hub, wasn't it? It was a lot of Punjabi families, a lot of Asian families in there. Sort of changed a little bit now. I don't know if you've been down there since.
Yeah, no, we do still got family there and still pop over because obviously you got the Sikh temples that are there. So
yeah.
We're there quite often, but when I was growing up, sort of 80s, it was predominantly a Punjabi background, and it was actually a nice place to be. Back then, you know, you had other families. It was quite safe in elements to walk around. It's not quite so now. So what you tend to have found is families that live there have moved out, but they haven't sold their houses on. They've then sort of let them out as low-level HMOs. So then you've lost that family element, that community feel from it. And then what I've also seen is there's been a rise in sort of drugs and stuff and antisocial behaviour. So elements of it you wouldn't really want to walk down at night by yourself. So it's changed as a town, but there's also changes that are coming because the new Crossrail line has now opened up.
Yes.
Which means you could be in Southall and take a train and be in Bond Street in 15 minutes. So there's a lot of gentrification that's coming, and I think it's going to be a different place in 10 years' time.
Have you invested in that area?
So we operate some properties and stuff there. We've got like some family properties that we manage, but I haven't actually invested in Southall itself. We actually chose another area when we looked at the Elizabeth line that we thought will be the one to invest in, which was West Drayton. The reason being the housing stock was a lot lower. It's the last sort of town as you exit Greater London. So we saw that as being our investment zone, and then we put all our resources into that from sort of 2008 onwards.
Wow. And how many properties you own in that area now, Matt?
I don't know how many properties we own altogether, but I can tell you that we manage probably 500 tenants, and that's across single units and HMOs and stuff. And the reason I can't tell you how many properties we own, because if you've got one property on the title, it could consist of like 6 or 7 units.
Yeah.
Like a commercial unit and maybe 6 flats. So it's quite difficult. And plus, I don't really want to focus too much on that because I don't want to lose sight of our goal, which is, producing good standard accommodation for working professionals.
Just before we go on to the sort of property side of things, you touched upon your sort of a little bit about you specialised in computer science as a master's, and you did an undergraduate. Looking at, I've done some research.
Yeah, sure.
you done a undergraduate in Brunel University, was it, in
That's
management?
right, yep.
And then you specialised in, or you did your masters in computer science. I know you said because of the boom in the IT sort of sector, but you're in that sector for 20 years, and you mentioned previously that you weren't.
It wasn't my passion, so I'm more entrepreneurial and business orientated. So I like that aspect of it. However, in the late 90s, there was a massive .com boom, and everyone was a part of it. And I saw people that were older than me leaving university getting pretty high paid jobs at that point for someone that's only been in the industry for 1-2 years. And I thought, this is an area that I need to be in. I didn't really understand pursuing your passion. That was just something that came to me later on. At that point, it was obviously about just working hard, getting a well-paid job, and then, wanting to buy your own home yourself and so on. So I thought, okay, look, this is an area that I need to go down. So yeah, I did 1 year. I completed a master's at Bath University. Straight after coming out from that, I've got a job in a corporate company as a graduate, as a programmer. And then basically I just kept pushing, just trying to learn, trying to improve myself, and ended up working for a city company doing commodity trading. So I was working on a gas desk for traders, and I was looking after the software and their P&L sheets and so on. But it wasn't my passion. So when I had my first job, I actually saw a crash in the market, and basically lastminute.com floated. You had 9/11 happen.
In 99, wasn't it? Yeah.
No, yeah, so that was in 2001.
Sorry, 2001.
2001, 9/11 happened, and what I saw within the company that I was working for, they had like 350 people in that office, and then within a year that fell down to 200. I saw people just on a regular basis being made redundant. And I just thought, okay, do you know what? I don't want to be in that situation. So in 2001, December 2001, I saw a property in auction, went, purchased it, got it let. I'm like, okay, look, it's quite nice. Once it was let, it was relatively headache free. And I thought, okay, this is something I should pursue. So I remember I purchased that at 120, but when I came to get it valued, it was worth 150. I'm like, okay, wow, I bought it 30k below market value, and that was nearly twice as much what I was earning as a graduate straight out of university. I'm like, okay. So then that 1 year, I think I purchased 3 properties that year. And then basically the idea was, as I'm working and by just obviously refinancing and using the cheap mortgages that were out at that point, I went along with my business partner, just building up a steady property portfolio.
How did you get the funds to buy 3 properties in that 1 year? Well, I guess it changed. The market wasn't as fierce as it is now, right?
So back then, there was, late 90s, they introduced buy-to-let products. So if you were going to buy a secondary home, it would always be on a commercial mortgage. So buy-to-let didn't exist, and I think there was some deregularization Tony Blair was in power, encouraged people, landlords to own properties. So you ended up with these cheap mortgages that came out. And back then you could purchase with 5% deposit, 10% deposit. So don't forget that property that I purchased at 120 was then later valued, once I had it tenanted and stuff, it was valued at 150. So I'm able to sort of refinance back out at 90%. And then I've got none of my capital left in that property. Use that towards another property. And then don't forget, if you're purchasing properties at, say, let's just say you purchase them at 150 and you only need 10% deposit between two of you, that's 7.5K each. So it's easy enough to even save your salary for several months and then have that to invest.
Yep.
So that was the idea, and that's what we were doing. We did that up until probably 2008. Then we just started experimenting with adding extensions on, converting like a small office into like a studio flat, to building a new home. And we were still trying to sort of find our purpose. Like, can we do something that we can actually add some value, make a change to the market? So that's where we looked at HMOs in 2010. We saw that rents were rising and there was a lack of affordable properties for working professionals in that sector. So traditionally, up until that point, most people were focusing HMOs with housing association, housing benefit, students. Working professionals were a neglected group, and we said, okay, look, if we were a working professional, we just came out of university and getting our first job, what would we want? We want like an ensuite sort of studio style room done to a decent standard, and that's what we were focusing on. 2013, we started to look at commercial offices to residential. There's some new planning rules that came out at that point. So since then, those are the two strategies that we've been employing. So commercial to residential conversions and HMOs. And by doing that consistently and to a good standard, it's helped us build a quite decent property portfolio up and also produce some great properties that have now gone onto the market.
So you seem like you found a gap in the market, it sounded like, during that time. Was there anyone else doing it, or was it just that you saw somewhere that you thought that how can exploit that?
There was no one sort of doing that within our area. So we're of a firm belief that if you want to be successful, if you want to make money, solve people's problems. So we found that the biggest issue out there was lack of affordable accommodation for working professionals that are living in shared housing. And that's what we focused on. And it's, up until now, there's still a massive demand for it. It's actually got bigger because when COVID's come in, people wanting to share bathrooms just fell off a cliff. And now you've got more demand for ensuite rooms. But before, up until then, you had so many HMOs that with all complete sharing facilities, and that's now changed.
And because of COVID, it was introduced to that. Do you reckon that was the biggest influence?
Well, COVID, at that point, when it came in, no one knew what was going to happen to the market.
Yeah.
You know, people moved away from the areas that we were operating in. They moved back in with their parents that were able to work from home.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, look, we had to actually drop rents to try to get people in to our properties in that period in 2020.
Yeah.
And then obviously we went through 3 lockdowns as things were starting to get better and people moving back. And then we went back into lockdown and people then handed in notices. It's only the end of sort of second half of 2021 that the economy fully sort of opened up. And then last year there was a massive demand for rooms, and it hasn't stopped because businesses are now operating sort of full speed again. The areas that we operate, you've got Heathrow Airport nearby, you got Stockley Business Park, which is Europe's biggest business park. You know, there's a lot more jobs, and obviously we've focused on this Elizabeth line area, so it's now probably, if you're living in the West, it's probably the most affordable part in the West that is very easily commutable into town. So things have worked in our favor, but we've had to be consistent and not give up and, you know, keep going.
Am I not mistaken? Did you start Savoy Properties in April 2020?
That's right.
So you started just at the beginning of lockdown.
That's right, yeah.
How must that have felt? You've just started this brand new sort of business, and all of a sudden this massive pandemic happens.
Yeah, it's just one of those. So we actually wanted to start the Savoys brand back in 2013, and there was basically myself, Sanjay, and two other partners. And every time that we wanted to go ahead with it, we had one person dropped out. Then it was down to three partners. And then eventually, when we said, okay, let's just go with it, the other partner dropped out. So it was just me and Sanjay. When we got to a stage, I think it was in 2019, we're like, okay, let's just go live with it. 1st of April 2020, it's a new tax year period. Let's move everything that we've got with other agents and like we've been outsourcing, let's bring everything back in-house. So that all went live. When we went into lockdown, I had no choice. We had to now be operating. So we're like, okay, it's a gift and a curse. A gift in terms of we've got no other distractions. There's no one, no social events. No, we don't have to do no physical meetings and stuff. They're just making it a success. And then we sort of pushed on this. We started using Instagram just to show people what we're doing with our properties and stuff. Surprisingly for us, we had quite a lot of people interacting with us. Like, oh, that's really great. Oh, what do you do about this? And we're just messaging. And then obviously the account's grown from like a few hundred back then to, I think we're at just over 22K now. And like on LinkedIn, we only started using that probably 18 months ago. We've got like over 2,000 followers on there. So it's built up pretty well, and it's quite, people assume that Savoys have been around for a long time.
I did. Just looking at your brand, it looks quite a well-established brand at the moment, and looking at the amount of followers and stuff you've got, I was like, wow, okay, they've done it but you've done it over quite a short period.
I'll tell you how our mindset was with this is if you're going to come into something, you have to commit, you have to go for it.
Yeah.
But then if you have, one thing you need to do is have a look at, doesn't necessarily be your industry, have a look at any other industry when someone's come into it and they've sort of made an impact. So I'll give you an example, like in terms of music, you've got like 50 Cent. So when he came in 2002, he came like a hurricane, and everyone was just talking about this particular music artist. We say, okay, obviously we're not to that size, but let's do something with our brand. And you come in and, you want people to be talking about your brand. So we then put that emphasis in how we market ourselves. And most of the marketing is all free. It's just basically our phone and putting it out there on the media channels that we're using.
How did you market yourself? What sort of content did you put out there that was really engaging with people? Is it showing how to build an HMO? Is it how to become a property developer? What sort of stuff did people really interact with?
I think it's a number of things. One, we had to sort of get into magazines and stuff where people read, so they see your logo and they see who you are. So within a couple of years, we're regular writers for HMO magazine, Blue Bricks magazine. We've been featured in Your Property Network magazine, Property Investor News. We've been featured in the Independent Times newspaper, and we've obviously done like some media stuff in terms of podcasts. We've arranged our own event where people then turn up, and if you put on a great event, one thing people do is they take some pictures with your logo in the background and stuff, and they share it on their socials so more people know who you are. But you can't get away from the fundamentals, which is obviously what we do. So what we do is we build properties, we convert properties. So we're just showing, and then we just put some knowledge on there. We try to make the posts engaging because you want people to interact. The more people interact with it, the more likely more people will see it. And that was it. And then I think the most important thing is to be consistent, because you've probably seen on social media, you'll have someone you'll have a friend that sets up a page. Yeah, can you support me? And you're like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll support you. And after 3 months, it just gives up. What we try to do is, okay, the social media page is a reflection of us. What does it show? We're consistent, relentless, you're at it, you're delivering on what you're saying. So if you have a look, if you show a project at the start, you'll always be able to see the end one. So it's just basically a reflection of ourselves. And I think that's what people like about it. And the idea for us is we didn't want to be Malkit and Sanjay. We wanted to be a brand, and then we can sit back. If you build a business, you can sit back. If you're Malkit and Sanjay, you always have to be at the forefront of it. And that gets away from what we talked about earlier, is freeing up time so you can spend it on holidays, family, so on.
Yeah, you said 100%. So you two are really the face of the brand, and you want to push through that relentlessness, the hard-working sort of skills that you're showing, and the consistency. I think that comes across with you
Consistency,
as well.
and plus, it's a big thing for us. It's just to come across always humble. We don't want to be that arrogant person. Look at me. It just, remember where we came from. Remember, say, our parents doing that manual labor. Where we were, and then the people that supported us along that way when we had nothing.
Yeah.
So you always have to remember those elements of it. It's not about the look at me now, which I find a lot of social media is. You get someone just posing next to a car. Look at me, I'm on like first class flight or whatever. Yeah. Our focus is always on what we do best, which is obviously properties.
How did you meet Sanjay? How did that relationship come about? And why was everyone dropping out of the Savoy project when you first started?
Okay, so with how I met Sanjay, which was actually quite a funny thing. So I've known him since 11 years old. So it was our first day at school.
Are you both from Southall? I'll take it.
But we're both from Southall, but we went to school in Hillingdon, so Uxbridge area.
Okay. Yeah.
So he came up to me that day, and I didn't know hello or anything. He just said to me, "I'll meet you after school. Let's have a fight." And I think on that first day of school, everyone was just offering other people out. And he said this, and he said, "Look, I'll see you in this place called Coney Green." I'm like, "Man, I don't know where that is." I just went home. Then basically what happened is, because you're from similar backgrounds, Punjabi, Asian backgrounds, you become friends. It's because you got a lot of similarities. And what you tend to find in life is people group together with people that you can affiliate with. Yeah. Associate in terms of your upbringing, all the rest of it. And so we just became friends since then. He was from a family background. He was from a family business background. They run a jewelry shop. Obviously, my parents were running their own businesses and stuff. So there was some similarities there, but both of us had one sort of goal that, we didn't want to be tied down to this physical business where you have to be in it and it's relentless and it takes up your time. So that's where the Savoys Properties stuff came from. So once we found a purpose with it.
And when you first, obviously, potentially there was 4 partners between you, weren't there? And how come the other two, one by one, they sort of dropped out and it just left with you two there?
The problem you find in life is, if you go out, let's just say you go for a meal and you sit with 3 friends, and you'll say, "Look, should we do this?" Yes, we'll do it. But when it comes down to putting physical time in, money in, commitment, then you find people drop out. So we ended up setting a company up. We had the names were on the company. But then I think we had a meeting once with everybody, and one of them turns around, "Well, okay, I'll do it, but I want to be paid a wage." I'm like, "Well, the business is not making anything. I'm still working and I'll put my time in." But look, but he then turned around and said, "Well, unless I put the physical time in, and I get paid for it, otherwise I'm not doing it." So he dropped out, and then we had someone else. I think he was just stringing us along with the whole business. "Oh yeah, I'll do it." We said, "Okay, if you do it, you have to put your properties that you own have to come through this company as a management. And Sanjay will do his, I'll do mine, and the joint stuff that I've got with Sanjay, everything will run through this. Because if we now unite and you've got all these properties under management, you're a lot stronger than just, we're just a small selection of properties." And he then dropped out. We're like, okay, then it's just me and Sanjay.
And did you know those other two as long as you knew Sanjay? Or was it just people that you just saw along the line?
Yeah, no, they're people that we knew. And yeah, we did know them as long as Sanjay as well, because we've been on this growth. But one thing is, not everyone has the same vision as yourself. Yeah. Because for us, it's even now with Savoys, we're 2 and a bit years in, but we've got a 10-year vision for it. So I don't actually physically take a wage or dividend or anything from the Savoys brand. It's basically, okay, let's reinvest into it, your sponsorship, collaboration deals and stuff that we have. But look, I'm looking at this point here. I want to be here. What do I need to do that? So we want to bring on more people into the organization. So I'd rather be focusing on paying their wages and their time They help build this brand because personally, I think we're on the verge of something special. But only if we focus on what we want to do and we stick to our key principles. I think we can do something that will make a change for the better in the industry.
Well, you've done that already. I mean, you're running for 2 years and you're already a sponsor of Watford Football Club.
Yeah,
That's crazy. How did that come about?
So the thing with football is there's not many people that look like us within the industry. So, and then both myself and Sanjay have got sons, and you want to give them some role models. And I wanted to sort of show that anything is possible. So that was the idea. So we basically, when me and Sanjay meet up, we just discuss things, and we were just discussing, well, we should sponsor a football club. And then with anything that we do, I'm like, okay, let's explore it. So we just reached out to a few clubs, and there were Premier League clubs that were local to us. The one that was more welcoming and wanted to spend the time just to entertain us was Watford Football Club. So it was one that we decided to go with, and our broker, CPC Finance, they've also joined us with that. And it's actually a nice family club. So it's, we'll take my wife and my kids there. My son's actually been a mascot, so is Sanjay's, for a big game. And it's just a nice feel for it. But it was just, for us, it was just like, wow, could we do this?
Yeah. How must that have felt to actually get that over the line? So that you can have your name brand on our shirt. Where do you have it? Is it on the boards? Is it on the stadium?
It's just on the board, and it'll be on like the TV screens within the stadium. They have a match day program. They'll mention us within there. But it was just, for us, it was just like, can we do it? But it is nice. So the game was on the weekend. So I don't know if you saw, but we put it on our socials, and Watford put it on their main page. Was when the goal was scored, the background was the Savoys board afterwards. So it's a nice thing to see for us.
Yeah, 100%. And you also, do you have a passion for sports yourself?
Yeah, so I'm an avid football fan.
What team do you support?
Liverpool, but they're not doing that great at the moment.
They're struggling big time.
Yeah, so but it's only Liverpool because obviously in that 80s period, when you used to put on BBC One, the only team I used to see on was Liverpool. So I've ended up just supporting them. But with hindsight, I'd rather have a team that is actually local, where you can actually go to the games. Where for me to go to Liverpool and back, it'll literally take the whole complete day.
Have you gone to any Liverpool games?
Yeah, we do go to Liverpool games. We're actually flying out next month, going for the Madrid versus Liverpool game.
Oh, what a game that'll be.
Yeah, so it's just something that we were looking forward to. It's like a bucket list for us.
Yeah, man. Oh, but do you know what? I think Liverpool could do well in the Champions League this year. I've honestly, I think the league, I don't know what it is, but I think there's always something going for Liverpool. If they don't do good in the league, they'll do good in something else.
I think Liverpool Football Club is run by a business, so FSG. FSG want to run the business, and they want to take the dividends and stuff out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a look at some of the other clubs like Man City,
Newcastle,
and Newcastle, and they're not effectively businesses; they're run by states.
Yeah.
So their philosophy is different. They're not concerned on actually making a profit and making sure you transfer players. So I think the problem is Liverpool's done pretty well over the last, let's just say, 7-8 years, with a very tight budget by only player transfers, and it's reflective of any other business. But yeah, let's hope Champions League goes well.
So I like Liverpool. I like Klopp. I reckon he's different class.
Klopp, and like someone like Klopp is basically, if you have that type of manager in any other business, like properties and so on, it's the same thing. I like the way he motivates players, gets the best out of them. It's like the same, doing that to your team, encouraging them, showing that passion, and that's reflective in the team.
How many people do you have in your team at the moment?
So you've got myself, Sanjay. We're sort of Savoys, so we've got different arms to it. So we've got a lending arm, which is just me and Sanjay. We've got a development arm, so it's me, Sanjay, and Hardeep. It's just someone that joined us now coming to 2 years.
Okay.
And then we've got like a management side where we've got Lauren, Jay, and Raj. And then we've got now an educational arm that's going to be opening up.
Amazing.
So that's going to consist of 4 of us. So it's going to be me, Sanjay, Hardeep, and then we've got Elizabeth Warburton, who's joining us as well, just to help us deliver the content.
That education sounds amazing. Tell us more about that. What is that? I don't know if you can say more about it. What's that you're starting up?
So what we found was over the years of just putting this out, I had so many people contact us. I'd like to come to site. I'd like to see what you guys are doing. Can you teach me about this? And we're like, okay, look, we're still focused on, sort of building our business up and delivering on what we're doing day to day. We then basically said, okay, let's just do this. Let's create a crash course on what we do, commercial to residential. We'll pack it into a day. We'll put in a site visit and stuff. So we had basically a whole action-packed day of it. And we're like, okay, well, will we be able to sell this out? So how many spaces can we have? I think, well, let's see if we can sell 15. So we sold twice as many. We sold like 30 spaces out for that. We then put that on socials, showing, look, this is the course. Then we had so many more people message us, look, when are you doing the next one? I'd love to come to it. So we did another one, and we ended up selling 45 spaces for it. And we said, okay, look, let's have a look at maybe doing this, but it's more time consuming because it actually required me, Sanjay, Hardeep to be there, some other members of the team, and then we ended up with guest speakers coming down. By the end of it, we had like sort of 12 people that come down to run this course. Like, would it be easier and it'd be cheaper for us and the people that will be taking the course to actually just have it online, where they can then do it within their leisure, and we basically pack it out with the same information, with the videos, or with a breakdown, with the slides and so on. So we now put that whole thing together online in terms of two courses, like as a crash course, as a day crash course you can do, and then as a 12-week course online. So that's looking to go live probably around 1st of March.
Wow.
And then if that goes well, we'll look at just adding different elements to it. So we'll have a look at adding a HMO course as well, which we also do. So it's actually what we found, the feedback from people that actually attended is actually refreshing to have a course from someone that's actually doing it. Within the industry, you've got basically developers such as ourselves, and then you have the educators that don't really do any property development. Their students may, but they're out there selling courses, and it's just for us another way of giving back, and then ensuring it's a reflection of us in terms of, 1, the quality, and 2, ensuring that it's really well priced. So you give more value to people than what they expect.
Yeah. So when they turn up, they're getting, as you said, a full day's, and hopefully walking over these lifetime of learning that they can take forward. Yeah.
So our key philosophy is, look, if your element of being successful is only you being successful, then you're not successful at all. So you'll probably see, if you have looked through our social media for the last few years, that we've been helping and encouraging people. We've been taking time out just to help them, and this is another way of us providing that help and support.
Amazing. Just another point I wanted to touch base on is you also sponsor somebody called Dylan Chima. He's obviously a boxer, up and coming boxer. How did that come about?
It came about from, 1, I saw Dylan on the Boxer series on Sky Sports.
Different class, yeah.
Yeah, so I saw him on there, and I saw him win, and I saw the celebrations afterwards in the ring, and I was like, wow, okay. I ended up following him on his social media, and he mentioned about potential sponsorship packages. And I reached out to the agent that was looking after that. We had like some correspondence back and forth, and then we agreed some terms. So we're front short sponsor for 2023. And the reason that we wanted to do that was obviously from the background that we're from. He's from a similar background, and it's nice to actually help someone from the same sort of community as yourself progress, because obviously from us coming up, there weren't people there to provide that support. So if we're in a position that we can help, then we would love to do our bit, and that's effectively it. And we ended up meeting him earlier this month, and he's actually a really nice human being, very humble, very grounded, similar to us in a way where His parents runs a convenience shop.
Yeah.
You know, and he's still, with the training and stuff, he's still helping out in the business and stuff himself.
Yeah.
And he's working really hard to make an impact in quite a difficult sport.
I think he's doing that already, isn't he? If you see such a, like, Ryland Charlton, I don't know if you saw you obviously did see his final fight, such a tough fighter. And for him to come through that really showed that he had a heart of a lion that night. Obviously, he had a loss recently, and hopefully he bounces back. I'm sure he will now that he'll take that into on his chin and move forward. Because I've seen him train. We went over to Birmingham. We did a training session together.
Nice.
In his gym. So it was good to see the amount of hard work he puts in. If he continues doing that, it's only the way up, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully a big 2023 for him.
Hopefully. And I think it's important for people to realise is, look, you have to learn to take your losses. You have, what I've noticed is people in industry and just in life, when you have a loss, you don't acknowledge it. Acknowledge your losses. Just because you have a loss doesn't mean you're lost. You know, you only lose when you give up in life. You keep going, you know, you haven't lost. So it's just basically with us as well. Everyone has the ups and downs, and that loss that he had there will be the foundations for him to build his career. And I think someone like him, you know, has it in him to go all the way for having a title fight.
Definitely, I think so. British level, potentially European. I think he can get up to a potentially world title. Puts the work in. You mentioned about losses. Have you experienced any losses in your sort of business experience in properties?
Look, if you're in business, regardless whether it's property or any other business, there's losses all the time. It's about how you react to them. So you'll have losses in terms of you're working with contractors, and you know you may pay them for something they've said they've done it, and that hasn't been the case. We've been pursuing properties where, you know, we're taking it all the way up to a conveyancing stage, and we're waiting to exchange, and you know you get gazumped by someone else that sees what you're trying to do, and you know you lose that money that you spent on the valuation fees and so on. But it's about how you feel and react. So I'm like, okay, look, that money, fine, we've lost that, but that's, you pay for education. I just consider that education. So what can we do now to, let's just say with a contractor, for them not to make us lose money on that? So we've created some systems and stuff. Again, when we're doing a purchase, what can we do to ensure that this property doesn't fall through? You know, build those relationships with that agent, make sure your solicitor's on top of it, put the pressure on to exchange, so on. So it's just basically your mindset with it. If your focus is on, I've lost money, then, you know, you're never going to be able to get over that hurdle. So I think it's just a thought process that you have to have, personally. And ours is, okay, look, you're going to make losses on it, but don't make that loss twice.
Yeah.
On the same.
Learn from your experience.
Yeah, you should never make that loss twice on the same subject.
What would you say you were on that contractor previously and you paid them the money? What has that taught you? What lesson have you learned from that you can potentially give to our viewers?
Well, I personally just have a system and a process in place for if you're dealing with contractors. Okay, so you need to inspect before the work start. You need to check out what needs to be done. Yeah. Before you release monies, what are you releasing them for? Is it for the materials? Okay, fine. Ensure that material is being used on site. And when that final payment needs to be made, you need to sort of inspect. I wouldn't be too concerned about having financial losses, because if you have a look at every single business, they will lose in some element. But you got to make sure that you're winning in 90% of the areas, as opposed to focusing on that 10% area that you made a loss.
It's quite interesting. Just another point I want to touch base on is, if any young listener was listening to this, what advice would you give them if they wanted to be in a similar position to yourself, build their own brand, want to get into the property market? What sort of advice would you give them? Well,
I'll say, if you want to do what we've done, is basically just start now. So start reading, start attending some networking events. Make sure you've got a passion for it, because if it's not your passion, you're only pursuing it for the money aspect, you're never going to be successful in it. The only reason myself and Sanjay have done well, we've won awards, and we've had properties featured in magazines and newspapers and stuff is because we're actually passionate about it. For us, property is an art. So we treat it like that. We want to portray, look, this is our finished product. So make sure you've got a passion for it and just basically work out a plan on what you're going to do. So work out an entry point in terms of what do you need to enter. Like, you don't necessarily need to have tens of thousands of pounds to get into property. People do rent to rent, where you guarantee a landlord that you're going to be able to pay him this much for this period of time. And then you can make that spread on top. And we've let properties to individuals that run it as serviced accommodation, but we're happy with a certain element of that monies, and he makes his money on top.
So is that, so imagine if I was to buy a property, from you, rent a property from you. I'd rent it from you. I said, Malkit, I'll give you £900, but the value of it is probably £1,100. Is that what you mean by that?
No. So let's just say
Sublet.
the value of the rent is £1,000 per month.
Yep.
And you say, look, I'll give you £1,000 a month. I'll guarantee it for, let's say, the next 2 years. There's things like service accommodation out there where you do, it's like effectively like a hotel stay. So someone could want it for 2 days, someone could want it for a week.
Okay.
But you can charge a premium on that.
Got you.
So he may actually get £1,800 in terms of revenue, minus a few £100 out from his costs, and he could have walked away with £600 per month from my property, which is fine, long as I know that he's doing service accommodation, he's doing it the right way. But that's not something that we're interested in, because it takes a lot of manpower and you have to set up little systems. I think what we're focusing on, we'd rather be the king of this section. And I don't mind dabbling in different areas in property, but I think you have to know where you want to be. You know, don't be a jack of all trades. You want to specialize in a certain area and be the best in that area, than trying to focus on loads of strategies and doing them all quite badly.
Yeah, focus. Don't be a jack of all trades. Focus on that one strategy.
That's right.
Go forward with that one. Progress that one. You mentioned a lot in this podcast about passion. Your passion is properties and business. When you were working in the office roles, in the corporate life, was that quite depressing for you? Were you quite, would you say it was?
So I've actually always been doing property since being in working. Yeah. So since the age of 22. So I've always been in property. But I just thought, okay, look, the work is funding this. At that time, I didn't realize you've got other ways I can raise funding. I just assumed it's the traditional buy-to-let mortgages and so on. Is only after meeting the likes of CPC Finance have showed, like, you know, there's other loans and other ways you can utilize your funding to get projects and stuff done. But that comes with, again, education. But I wasn't passionate about my 9 to 5 as, say, other people were, because I saw my future being in property. It was just, the difficult bit was when to take that step and just go all in. And for me, the point where I had to go all in was my son was born, my wife wanted to go back to work. I needed some flexibility in terms of, say, finishing half an hour early from work on a couple of days so I can just make it back to pick my son up from nursery.
Yep. And
work weren't flexible with that. So I'm like, okay, then I resign.
Just like that?
So I resigned. I actually didn't even tell my wife. I was on a 3-month notice period. I told her like about a month later. So, by the way, and then she's like,
breakfast, retired.
Yeah. She's like, what? But I was like, look, have faith. I'm going to go down this route and we're going to make it work. So that was in 2017. November 2017, I actually went full time in there. And actually, November 2020, we ended up winning Commercial Property Developer of the Year at the Property Investor Awards.
What month was that, sorry?
November.
November 2020.
It was actually 28th of November 2017. That was my last day at work. And 28th of November 2020 was the day that we won our first award.
Wow.
So yeah, it looks like it was meant to be. But then from when I gave up, I'm like, okay, let's just step it up. Let's do more projects. Let's just go harder and harder. Be sort of relentless. And then it was only then, okay, look, I think we can build a brand. And that's when we had that sort of factored in. When in 2019, we were making decisions to sort of go live with this business.
It seems like everything fitted into place for you, but it must have been it doesn't just fit into play because you've done years of this to build it up. That brand, your own brand. Obviously, the Savoy brand isn't something that come overnight. You've had 20 years of experience in the property industry, haven't you?
Yeah.
So, I think you've said that quite clearly, that your experience has come across.
It's come from that. I think people get confused where they just look at it like these guys just coming out of nowhere, but we didn't come out of nowhere. We've been there, but we on purpose, we didn't want to be in that sort of limelight. I think being from an Asian background, your parents always say, just carry on working quietly. Don't really tell people, like, because of the jealousy aspect that you have out there.
Yeah.
However, with social media and stuff now, the benefit is from showing and telling people what you're actually doing. Because what happens is then companies approach you, individuals approach you. It actually opens up more avenues for yourself.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Was 6 months ago, we went for the biggest site that we were going to buy. It was at £2 million. I then put an offer in. There was 40 people going for this site. The agent actually phoned me back saying, "Oh, look, I'm so impressed with your offer in terms of how we packaged it up, showing how we're going to be able to afford to pay for this, so on," and showed him who we were. He goes, "I'm going to put you forward for the people that we want to actually go for." So it actually goes to show, so social media actually helps to get the job done. So now for us, if we're going for a site, people know who we are within the industry, and it actually helps us in terms of I have to do half the work to actually acquire something now because people know who you are.
You've built that brand up in such a short time, as you said.
I was listening to Grant Cardone's book, and he said, look, you need to become a celebrity within your industry. Reason being, because when you walk in the room, the job's half done. Otherwise, I would have to walk in and say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. Look, let me show you on my phone some projects that I've done.
Yeah.
Here, you can see our projects are on LinkedIn and Instagram and so on.
I think that's the beauty of social media now, isn't it? Is you don't have to go into an office and you're pretty new to the industry and people's introduce yourself and go for it. If you've built up a brand on your social media, that can help so much.
I think so. It's basically the most powerful tool.
And what, your events look really good as well. From the images
thanks,
I've seen, and people who I know have been resharing it. Obviously, I found you for my boxing background with Dylan Chima.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that you sponsor him, so you're not just sticking to that one avenue, you're getting other avenues and bringing it closer as well.
I think it's important to not just focus in one area. So if you want to build your brand, you need to sort of venture out. We're firm believers that, don't go with the flow, be the flow. Create your own flow. So with our events, we actually thought, okay, let's create something that's not out there. So our events, one are free. There's unlimited drinks, canapes and stuff that are provided.
Free?
It's free, yeah. So I didn't want anything from it. So we did the first one, and I remember just contacting people on Instagram. Look, we're doing an event. I didn't want to oversell it. Yeah. So we undersold it in terms of what it was going to be. And then when people turned up, it was only going to be a one-off event. It was just our networking. I was sick and tired of attending events, and they had the same theme to it. You pay £20-30 to attend an event. You listen to a couple of speakers, but those speakers basically just spend their time just selling their training course. And the bit that you actually enjoy is right at the end, when you're at the bar and you're speaking to someone else. So what do you do? So on. And then me and Sanjay said, look, wouldn't it be great if you can do an event and it's just three hours of just pure networking? So we stepped that up. When actually we did the events, the last one, we actually turned in sort of an end of year party. So I don't know if you saw, but people were actually dancing and stuff at it. It was just, and we had nearly 250 people there.
Wow.
On there. But then the interesting thing is we've had companies approach us that we want to work with you, want to sponsor you and so on. So we've got so many brands that now have come together to help us put these events together.
Amazing, man. That sounds great. What does the future hold for you and for Savoy Properties now?
It'll be business as usual. So the idea is we'll keep building our brand. So obviously we've got this educational arm taking off. So we're putting some effort into that to make that a success. We want to continue with the property development stuff because that's effectively all we know.
Yeah.
And then the idea is just to collaborate with people, companies, and see what we can actually do with it. So we've got this philosophy in terms of no limits. Don't limit yourself. like in terms of when you put targets, you're actually we think you're limiting yourself. I want to buy 2 properties this year, but you put a limit on it, because when you've hit 2, you're like, okay, I'm done now. I've hit my limit for the year. So don't put a limit on it, and nothing's out of bounds. So someone actually approaches you and says, do you want to sponsor a film festival? So which we had. So I don't know if you know Terry Stone. He does the Rise of the Foot Soldier series.
Oh, okay, yeah. Wow.
So we collaborated with him on one of our events, and then we actually sponsored his films in the Marbella Film Festival as well. So like nothing's off limits. So let's have a conversation. How can it work? That's the idea, and we'll just see what it becomes in terms of the company. But just the main thing is not to lose our key principles of, you know, like hard work, honesty, relentlessness, the passion, and so on. We'll just keep that going forward.
Do you reckon now, particularly, is imagine someone, because going back to what I said earlier about any young person looking to get in the industry of property, do you reckon now it's very difficult for someone who's 21, 22, 23 looking to get in the property market? Do you reckon it's quite tough for them to do it now?
It's difficult, but not impossible. So what you have to do is understand the market. If you say, look, I want to buy a property first time in Mayfair or Knightsbridge, it's going to be very, very difficult. You know, focus. I normally look at like train lines or motorways and stuff. So if you have a look at that, just follow it up until where you can afford to operate. And what we did, if you have a look at what we did, was we chose one of the most affordable areas within Greater London to start building our property portfolio, which I used to tell people in the 2000s, we're investing in West Drayton. I said, why are you investing there? I said, it's up and coming. And they'll turn around to me and say, West Drayton's been called many things, but up and coming isn't one of them. However, if you have a look at it today now, you could jump on a train from West Drayton, you could be in Canary Wharf in 35 minutes. You know, if you go through that actual town, like the new builds and stuff that are there, you've got new businesses and stuff that want to actually be there. You know, you can see that change is actually coming, and the decisions that we made, say like 14, 15 years ago, was the right ones.
And that was the home of Savoy Properties, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's our base. And the reason that I invested in West Drayton also was because my parents had shops there back in the day, and it was quite a poor, deprived area, and we're then doing our little bit to change it.
Hey, have you read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yes, and
it sounds very similar to that sort of story about how he found areas that was underdeveloped, that had potential, bought it, invested, slowly the prices increased, took the dividends out, bought in another area, and grew.
No, I agree.
Until he was able to buy his own Ferrari.
Yeah. Again, I completely agree with that. And I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. One thing that actually stuck in my mind was 2 columns. Assets and liabilities, and everything in my head now just falls in those 2 columns. If you're going out for, say, a meal, it's a liability, but actually if I go out on a meal with, let's just say, a bank, and I get some deal agreed, then it's a asset.
If you go out for dinner with your wife, what's that?
It's a compromise. Yeah. So like everything falls into it, and there's not, having liabilities and stuff isn't a bad thing. Just focus on having more assets than liabilities.
Amazing. Malkit, thank you very much for your time. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us before we go?
No, but thanks for having me. If you guys want to connect, then reach out to us on Instagram, Savoys Properties, LinkedIn, Savoys Properties. We're on there, and it's always myself and Sanjay that will come back to anyone that DMs us, and anyone that ever leaves us a comment or a DM, we always ensure that we sort of come back to them, sort of encourage people to do good things in property.
Amazing. Malkit, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For coming on, and all the best with Savoy Properties.
Yeah, thank you.